In this video, we will be thinking about the process of creating an overall structure for your essay. The basic approach is to begin with an introduction which signposts to your reader how the essay is going to develop. This is then followed by a series of paragraphs in which you work through the main ideas of arguments that you want to make in your overall answer. Typically, there is then a conclusion, followed normally by a bibliography. This collection provides other videos on writing introductions and conclusions and individual paragraphs within your essay. This video focuses on how to structure the various main essay paragraphs so that your overall argument progresses clearly. So let's begin. Normally, when you conduct research on an essay question, you will realise that in order to answer the question, there are several arguments that need to be advanced so as to answer the question effectively. So let's say, for example, that you are answering a question seeking to explain why a specific society's attitudes towards gender and gender roles changed over a 30-year period. Once you've carried out your research, you might find that key groups of activists or intellectuals played a role in bringing about this change. That developments in technology or changes in patterns of working altered the way that people thought about gender roles. Or that a sudden event such as a natural disaster or a war, or even a rapid burst in prosperity, caused people to rethink gender roles. The list could go on, but the point is, once you have identified your major factors as well as their supporting evidence, you will need to think about how they can be joined together to form an overall argument. There are several issues to be raised here, and I will go through them now, one by one. Firstly, how much space should you assign to each of your factors within the overall word count? If you are writing a short essay with perhaps a 1,500 word limit, then you will need to think carefully about which factors you can include. You may decide that in order to cover the main factors, you may not be able to include some of the less important factors. Certainly, when you discuss any factor, you will need to ensure that you leave enough space to fully explain your ideas and to supply the relevant evidence and discussion. Secondly, you will need to think about the order in which you address your key points. In our example about gender roles, we might find that a crucial group responsible for changing society's attitudes towards gender only developed their views in response to the advent of a specific technological development, which was itself responsible for bringing about further change. So in this case, it would make sense to focus on the technological change and its broader impact first, because this will then make it easier to explain the development of the activists' ideas. Thirdly, you will also need to be careful to plan your essay so that you don't end up repeating yourself or making the same point twice. It's often a good idea to make a list of your key points on the computer and then to think carefully if there is any significant overlap between the arguments you are making. If so, you may need to merge or perhaps split up some of your ideas. Fourthly, remember that when you answer a question, you are not being asked to tell the story of the issue under discussion. So in our example, you are not being asked to simply tell the story of changing gender roles in the society. Instead, you are being asked to focus on the reasons for this change. You might briefly summarise the key developments in the introduction or when providing background for some of your major factors so that the reader can understand the significance of what you are saying, but your focus needs to be on the reasons why these developments took place. Fifthly, there may be some other points that you want to raise in your answer to the question, but you lack the space and the word count to include them. Sometimes it is possible to create space by writing some of the other points in your essay more concisely, but at other times there simply isn't enough room. At such moments, it can be a good idea to mention in your essay introduction that you have chosen not to include these points so that your marker recognises that this is intentional. I hope this video has been useful. For more advice, please see the other videos in this collection.